Hi guys, back up a bookshelf here, and on the back, not my bookshelf. So the realization that I've been drawing for 13 years, and I had this current style for 5 years, especially with the fact that I haven't changed my style drastically during it, has struck me. That's impressive for me. But that thought has spawned an idea. The idea of attempting to replicate older versions of my style. Well, I'll briefly yap about its characteristics and somewhat of a history, you can say. Well, let the real deal play. At first, I start with the basics, the composition. I was heavily inspired by one art trend on TikTok, if I can recall, but it was either one of your see or perhaps even you, and showing how they got in better after some time has passed. I thought that the composition with 4 personas would work best for my idea, but I have like 5 eras of my style. So I decided to group them in year to year rather than just a year, especially with one era, but they were quite identical to each other, despite being from different years. I'll apply this dusty dark blue monochromatic palette to all of the characters for my own convenience, and I will draw myself. I may hate drawing myself, but I will do it here. Well, I hope you got the gist of it, so let's jump to the beginning of everything, the era that without knowing it, will establish myself in the long run. Late 2020 era. This style sparked practically by accident, when I was bored at school and had this style. I originally planned to use the anime-ish art style as a gag for a comic that never came to life, but after some time, I decided to switch from that one to this one. It is a really simple and cute art style, which definitely had this Flash Bombardier influence in all the artist's style back in the 2020s to 2021s. The face is actually really cute, if you're gonna ignore the massive forehead that is twice bigger than the actual face position. Oh, and the chin is a standard anime chin that has a slight curve above a thin, stick-like neck. You can see this tiny L-shaped nose right in the middle of the eyes. And the eyes has a long upper and a teeny tiny lower eyeline that only female characters have. Male characters only have upper eyeline. Talking about the details that only female characters have, eyelashes. There are just 2 short lines both on the upper and lower eyelines. The eyes were oval-shaped that was cut out from the top, with a U-shaped catchlight on the iris, as well as a regular short-line catchlight on the sides. The hair is relatively stiff-looking, that even this hair highlight with additional cross highlights wasn't saving it. On some drawings, it looked like the character was balding or had horrid bangs. The body is 1-to-1 to the head, like it fits perfectly in there. And let's ignore the hands, they're kinda alright. The liner had no line weight, it was just a one take, one thickness line, usually it being purple. So sometimes I use pink for skin. And the shading was a simple cell shading with the confusing placement of shadows that were flat. Despite being the first era, I have so little of art with that style comparing to other eras, and I have 0 digital art with it. The explanation for that is quite simple. Since I was at school and mostly drew on notebooks instead of a sketchbook, so either I lost the examples or I started to switch the stylization of some details. Because of that, I put a paper texture on top of a character as somewhat of a homage to only traditional art of that era. Well, that was very obscure, but an important era in my art style journey. Let's jump to the era I consider my prime, but perhaps it's the opposite. 2021 to 2022. Well, I've been a Danganronpa fan since 2020. Yeah, back then I was drawing original art and fan arts equally. Until this era, where I scratched off original art and was drawing non-stop Nagis and KMHN fan art. And even though I wasn't improving that much, they were and still a huge part of my art journey. So in this era, that soft look of eyes changed to a more sharper one. Basically now upper eyeline had a one short line and the other longer one. With lower eyeline, I brought it back to all genders. And the oval iris started to look more like a rounded rectangle. I also started to draw pupils that follow the shape of an eye. In some arts, the nose has a nose bridge, and going more to 2022, there was a line that works as a nostril of some sorts. The nose has 2 shapes, round and pointy. All the shapes,
So I'm actually not authorized to disclose this information?
The body proportions, hands, and minor stay the same. The chin got sharp as a blade, and when drawing in 3/4 angle, I put the neck right on the edge of the chin. Ow. The shading is still cell shading, but actually start to add depth in some art, like adding gray or more darker areas on the skin. This is also the era where I drew Hajime with slightly longer hair than his canon design, sometimes way too long, and Nagito's hair seems more legible than in his canon part, which is a huge fluff on the head. But in general, the hair shading looks interesting and I had added too much hair highlights. The understanding of where the light source hits wasn't present in that era, as well as good mental health. 2022 especially sucked ass. Around the time, I wasn't drawing for some months for sure, and took a 2-year hiatus posting on Instagram, a social media that I had my presence at the time. But I still do hold those sketches and art dearly. In fact, perhaps I should withdraw some of them.
Shut your fucking mouth!
Anyway, that was 2021 to 2022 era. My bittersweet icon with the beginning of this non-stop KMHN fan arts. I hope that 2023-24 is better. Well, it is, and it is the prime, and KMHN is still hugely present here. This era, where I finally started to improve and learn new things, instead of staying in the comfort zone and lying to yourself that you do improve. The body proportions expanded a bit. Now you can fit 1 1/10 of a head in it. The face proportions finally started to look more proportionally correct, as my decision in my art was to combine realistic proportions with stylization. In percentage, it's 60% to 40%, though I did butcher the space between mouth and chin in 2024. It looks a bit chopped. Some changes to eyes happened, like the lower eyeline is longer than before, and later added small lines in the eyes as dividers between shadow and the eye base. The chin came back to being more softer than its previous era respectively. This is the era where I started to add upper eyelids, the hair that actually looks like hair with its iconic highlights, and extra thick necks. Though, thankfully in 2024 I fixed that issue. Speaking of 24, during that time, I was experimenting with a lot of stuff, mainly with color and rendering. I occasionally switched between cell shading and a soft render, and did 2 to 3 color palette challenges, and a genuine attempt at diversifying my art, all thanks to mouthwashing. Also, I finally had some sort of understanding of light and shadow and where they fall. Yay! I also evaluated the cell shading by making the face a bit brighter and adding a shadowy gradient on the bottom. The line art was the most time-consuming thing in my process. Like, it was taking around 6 hours. I don't know how I could manage to do it for half a year. I definitely was super dedicated to it, even if I wanted to start a different process so bad. Though later on, I switched it to a much more simple one. I also started to add a canvas texture in digital art. I was heavily inspired by this Danganronpa computer graphic, as they have this texture and I thought it would look good in my art. This era is also the start of my YouTube channel, and having a raw video that I still don't know why is it viral. Anyway, I am kinda ashamed that the actual visible improvement only happened in 2024, but back then I was drawing for the sake of entertaining myself and making content that I want to see, like I don't do it now, just making it public. Well, stuff happens. Glad that I did start to improve and move forward with my art instead of staying in the comfort zone for years. You saw my past styles. How about this year? Is it different than the others? Yeah, it is. Spoilers, fast improvement, and another ship has entered in my art journey. Ooh, this year had a fast improvement. And by fast, I mean since July I went from this to this. The body proportions shifted to more realistic looking than the cartoony one from previous eras. Face proportions in the first half were the same as in 2024, but in the second half, I added another detail, a teeny tiny line that indicates a chin. That liner was used to everyone. The liner was the same simple one, just sometimes it was actually a polished sketch. Yeah, that 6-hour liner had exhausted me. The shading became a lot better, and I used this mix of cell shading and soft render as my to-go render. And with those examples, you can see that even this had become more realistic. That 60 to 40% ratio really is present in this era, huh? I still do cell shading, but not as often as this mashup. The iconic hair highlights are gone, due to them being inconvenient with the direction I was going. The hair in general started to have depth in it. I even brought back this short-lived render from 2021 to this era, obviously with a different render technique. July is not just the month that I was improving like a beast, but also the month that I finally accepted my liking to a certain ship, the ones I blindly believed the lies about it and hated it. And perhaps the main reason of my fast improvements. But is it truth? Or I'm just deceiving myself? Yeah, no, it was a personal desire to get better at art. Yeah, no, that the vanilla played a huge part in it, both in diversity, but this is mainly because I came back to Cookie Run Kingdom 3 years later, and this was shit to art with symbolism sprinkled in it. In general, having this desire to draw more gloomy art than I drew in 2024. It is pretty interesting to see how this style of mine changed from this simple and cute aesthetic-like style to realistic yet still stylized style that has both sunshine and rainbows and dark and gloomy art. What I think is super interesting is how one popular ship suddenly gave me huge motivation to improve my art, probably because of its complexity and wanting to capture its dynamic, which kinda led me to capture KMHN's dynamic too, of course. And that was it. That was a brief history of my art style. You can see that even after finding somewhat stable style, it was and still is changing instead of being this monolith. I hope you guys enjoyed this yap video and see you next time. Bye bye!
So I'm actually not authorized to disclose this information.